Cool. So we're good. So thank you everyone for joining us here, and it's wonderful that we can actually leverage this opportunity and actually to meet together to speak about interesting topics around the blockchain development world. And one such interesting topic that has been coming more or less in our work, both with me and James, it has been on the topic of how one can actually build dApps that are so unique and so well designed in terms of user experience that they actually hide away the blockchain. People use them like regular applications, but actually they use the blockchain and all the benefits of the blockchain under the hood. So this is the topic of the lecture for today, and we want to share with you our findings based on our work. So what is the agenda for today? We want to speak briefly about what is the blockchain complexity problem and why is this actually even needed? What were some of the steps that were taken in solving these problems? And actually, we're going to show you and give you a playground where you can play around with smart wallets and see how these feel compared to anything else that you have experienced under the blockchain umbrella. So, first of all, a little bit about us. Who are we and why are we actually speaking about it? So, my name is George Spasov, and I'm co-founder of LimeChain. And in LimeChain, we have been developing now, I think, more than 50 different blockchain-based projects. And many times, our clients have been asking us to, hey, can we actually make this simple? Can we actually not ask people to remember seed phrases or install plugins or do stuff similar to this? And in the past 2 years, we have been heavily involved into different user experience solutions, and smart wallets is one of these solutions and probably the most exciting one. And my colleague here in presenting is James. James, up to you to present yourself.
Yeah, thanks, George. I have been in the blockchain, mainly the Ethereum space, for the last 4 years. Participated in 2 different ICOs, was a co-author of the AdChain white paper, which introduced the notion of a token curated registry. Also was involved in a project that did the first layer 2 solution on the Ethereum network, a payment channel solution. That was the first one in production. And helped launch Moloch DAO and the Meta Cartel DAO, and seen the ecosystem evolve, and agree with George in terms of where the industry is heading. And as we are going to explain today, one of the key fundamental changes or primitives that I think we as developers need to introduce is this shift from key-based wallets to smart contract-based wallets. And that's been my focus for the last 1.5 years with Abridged.
Okay. And a little bit later, we will probably all ask you to give us a little bit more showcase of what Abridged does and how this actually helps in terms of smart wallets. But before we do this, let's actually learn why we would need to do something like this. So I'm going to briefly go through the history and give a bit of history lessons. So a couple of years ago, when the first consumer-facing Dapps launched, and you probably already recognize what this is a CryptoKitty, we learned something, and this something was actually very troubling. It was that more than 90% of the users actually bounced off due to the complexities of the blockchain. And I know that complexities of the blockchain probably sounds way too abstract for what we are speaking here, so let's try and narrow them down a little bit. So what complexities are here? Well, plugins. For example, what CryptoKitties encounter is that they were asking their users to download a plugin into their browser in order to be able to use their application, and this means that you could only use one browser at least at that time, and it was very device dependent, and you would not be able to transfer your account into another device. Another thing that you would need to figure out as user is actually crypto. So, well, in order for you to do anything with these first dApps, we would need to actually find some ETH. And how do you find it? And what is the process of finding it? How fast can this go through? We probably, all of us here that are on this webinar, have gone through a KYC process and know that this can take from a couple of hours to days. If you're lucky, it's going to be just a couple of hours, but it can go even to 2 weeks. And why do we actually need to figure out what this ETH is, where we just want to breed some cats? So this was another complexity that was putting off people. And last, fees. Well, why are these fees here? I just want to breed some cats. I mean, I just want to like cross-pollinate them and figure out new cats. Why do I need to care about this? Why should I understand actually what is 5 cents in ETH or 50 cents in ETH, and why is actually this rising? Why is suddenly $1 in ETH or $3 in ETH? You remember the CryptoKitties boom of prices. So people essentially were craving on their regular UX. It is not simple for them to figure out all these new terms in like seed phrases, like wallets, like cryptos, like fees, what are transactions, why do we have transaction hashes and stuff like this. And pretty much there were like multitude of problems. I have enumerated just some of the problems that were there. So let's just briefly go over them. So you need a third-party plugin for you to enter these applications or a special browser. You cannot have device interoperability, and you know people love to browse stuff from their website, from their web and browser, but they also love to take their phone and just browse again from their phones. There was need for crypto onboarding, going through KYC. This could easily take a day, and you have to be very into cat herding in order for you to not forget in a day that you wanted to get herd. People needed to figure out what like transaction costs are and why are these there. People needed to figure out what ETH is and what does it actually do when why do they need to buy it. And then we come into inconveniences of stuff like, well, if you lose your wallet, you lose everything of yours forever. And you need to figure out stuff like contracts and contract specific when you're interacting with tokens. And again, you need to back up your seed phrase if you ever know what seed phrase is and what keys are. So very few people actually did this and understood what seed phrases and keys are. But yeah, first attempts were made into solving these problems by different groups. Probably the one that I remember most clearly was the MITRE wallet, where they allowed you to create a wallet that allows you to, through a use of password, something that is quite familiar to you, to actually download a file that is encryption of your keys, that encrypted by your password. And it was actually quite an improvement at this time, because you no longer needed to care about seed phrases that much, because you can actually have your file, upload it to MITRE wallet, plug in your password, and you'll have your wallet back. And you can do this in any browser that you want. And of course, you can see there were some warnings that MITRE wallet actually put there. I don't know whether you can actually read them correctly, but these say, do not lose it, do not share it, and make a backup. So what did people do? Well, people kept losing them, kept sharing them, and never backed them up. So yeah, they had one job, but they didn't do it. So Dapps and Dapp developers decided, hey, why don't we actually do anything about this? Because people are obviously going to be people, and they will be continuing to be sharing and losing these, and losing access to their apps. And they decided to do internal wallets. And internal wallets are pretty much the same concept as what the JSON files that were downloaded from MITRE wallet were. But instead of actually giving you the downloaded file, they were actually saving it into database. So the flow of interacting with internal wallets was as follows. You just log in with your regular authentication mechanism, like you input your email, you input your password, and you're in there. And then on the client-side application, a wallet was generated, encrypted via your password, and then the encrypted version of your wallet was actually saved in a database. This allows you next time when you go into this website, regardless whether it's from the web browser or whether it's from the mobile application, you can just download the file from the browser, decrypt it with your password, and continue using it. And this was actually quite an improvement already, because you are no longer browser dependent. You didn't need the complexity of plugins or uploading key stores, and the interactions could actually be hidden under the hood. So the users pretty much click a button, like I want to herd a cat, and the interactions happen. There were like no pop-ups, nothing like this. And this was very good improvements, but there were again some things that were still unattended to. So encrypted wallets were served centrally. So if you had any problem with the service that was storing the wallets in the database, well, you would probably have a very bad time in order for you to log in into the system, use your wallet. And again, if you forget your password, because your wallets are encrypted with your password, you will never be able to decrypt your wallet. So essentially, by you forgetting your password means that you're going to be losing all your blockchain assets that are associated with this wallet. Recovery again could happen only through seed phrases. So even if you forget your password, but you remember seed phrases, you can input your seed phrase and recreate your wallet. But people hated seed phrases, and we saw that from the first experiments. Like, people were not good at saving these seed phrases and recollecting them together. They saw the pop-up that says, "Hey, please back up your seed phrases inconvenience," and never did it. And again, we still haven't figured out how crypto plays into all of this. What are the different types of cryptos? What are transactions? What are transaction costs? And how actually people are going to figure out contract specifics. So although we have made a lot of progress, we have accounted for at least two of the outlined crypto experience problems. It was not yet all solved. It was not yet all there. And then somewhat figured meta transactions. Meta transactions are pretty much a tool, and via the meta transactions, smart contracts can actually act as more powerful wallets, as more powerful versions of what you already had as your keys. And before we continue further, we can just say that, like, these are some of the companies that were working on meta transactions. And what actually meta transactions are, well, this is actually an approach, smart contract development approach, which actually allows people to execute actions not as sending them from their wallet, but actually signing a given command with their wallet and allowing somebody else to actually relay this message to them. And the smart contract that is receiving this message is actually going to check whether this has been signed by you, not whether it has been submitted by you into the blockchain. And essentially, this means that the message sender will pay for the transaction, but the message sender can be otherwise, that is not someone else, but not you. And why this actually gives the benefit here? Well, this actually is able to abstract away the concept of gas and fees, because gas and fees are something that the message sender is going to be bothered with. It's the person that's submitting the transaction into the blockchain. And if you're just signing a simple command, you're not bothered with this. And this actually also allows user to pay to these message senders and these relayers in any currency that the relayers are willing to accept. And maybe if we go on one step further, the relayer might even decide that they're a good Samaritan and not even ask you for any money for them to submit this transaction to the blockchain. And this is where we came into smart wallets. Smart wallets are pretty much the combination of internal wallets plus meta transactions. And these actually give us quite a lot of interesting nuances of the blockchain interaction, and they allow us to do very, very powerful things. So let's briefly look into what these are. Well, smart wallets are smart contracts that are representing the user. Essentially, cryptos and other assets of the user can be associated with this smart contract instead of the user wallet. And then this smart contract is created in such a way that it can execute any action that is authorized by the user's wallet. And how is actually authorization happening? By the user wallet just signing a message. And as we spoke in the meta transaction, well, the authorization message can be relayed by anyone, and which means that a relayer can be used for submitting this transaction into your smart wallet. And again, your regular wallet that is signing these messages can be internal wallet. We already saw most of the benefits for the internal wallets. And again, even with some further degree of centralization, we can add even more user experience benefits. But let's look at this very visually. Like let's see how this actually works in terms of a flow of things. So pretty much you as the user, you log in into the client-side application. And when you log in into the client-side application via the internal wallets, you actually get served your wallet that is going to be signing messages. And then you decide that you want to interact with certain intended smart contract. What you can do there is you can actually produce the data that you want to send to the intended smart contract, bundle it together, sign it as a message, but instead of submitting it to the blockchain, just give it to a relayer. And the relayer is going to give this data to the blockchain, to your smart wallet, and pay the fees in the meantime. And then your smart wallet is going to check the data and see whether this has been authorized by you, by your wallet. And if it has been authorized by you and your wallet, it is only then going to go ahead and execute the actions that are encoded in the commands and do interact with the intended smart contract. So what this actually does give to the users? Well, first of all, you can sponsor transactions. For those dApps that are actually want to completely abstract away the notion of transaction fees, gas, etc., etc., this actually gives the opportunity for them to be sponsors of transactions of their users. So the users might never actually know that there has been fees that have been paid, because these can be baked into other business areas of the dApps. And you can be paying with your own token. As you know, many projects have their own token for some reason or another. And you can make actually a relayer that is willing to accept this token as their own payment currency. And you can also batch transactions together. One of the specifics of wallet interactions without smart contracts is that you can actually perform just one action at a time. And with smart wallets and with smart contracts in general, because they're more powerful, you can actually use scripts and you can actually batch more than one action together, which adds more speed, which adds more security, and it just adds more awesomeness. And what about account recovery? Well, you can use a concept that's called guardians and just set in your, give a rule in your smart wallet and give the ability to somebody else to actually be able to replace what is your internal wallet and allow you, if you lose your internal wallet, to set your new internal wallet as the authorization, as the one that needs to authorize your commands. So instead of having this, we can just add one more piece, one more player, that's the guardian, and you can actually request the guardian to, if you have lost your wallet, you can say, hey guardian, I lost my wallet. You can authorize in front of your guardian with other means, and then tell them, hey guardian, this is again me, I have lost my wallet, can you please go to my smart wallet and change the old internal wallet that I had and I have lost to my new internal wallet that I have just generated. And this achieves several very good benefits. First of all, you have not lost access to your smart wallet. And second of all, you have not lost access to your assets that are associated with your smart wallet. Essentially, you have recovered your access to your smart wallet through the use of the guardian. And the guardians, who can be your guardian? Well, for some systems, these can be the service that you're using. It can be just like baked under the hood, and allow for people to go through regular forgotten password flows, like, you know, just clicking I have forgotten my password, submitting your email, then receiving on your email validation link, changing your password, and when your password is changed, a new wallet is generated, it's given to the service, and the service, acting as guardian, can actually input this new wallet of yours as your authorization wallet. But of course, this can be done in other ways. It can be another wallet of yours. If you have like a hardware wallet, you can set it as your guardian. Or even you can set your friends or even your relatives as your guardians, so that they can be the ones that are saving you in case that you need any protection, or in case you need your authorization wallet to be replaced. And what we have solved with all of this, well, we've solved the first two with internal wallets. The need for crypto and onboarding and KYC and figuring out crypto is very highly use case dependent. For some use cases, you might be sponsoring everything there, and people would not need to go through any crypto onboarding or any KYC and figuring out crypto. With other projects, people would still might be needing this, but this is now a business decision instead of technical decision. People no longer need to figure out what transaction costs are and how these play out. They don't need to figure out what ETH is, because the relayers are paying the ETH. People can recover their lost wallets. People no longer are constrained to the smart contracts interactions specifics, and you no longer need to back up your seed phrases, because guardians are going to be there if you have any problems with your account. And I think this is a good place maybe for us to stop for a couple of questions, and then maybe James can show us actually how these work in practice, how we can play around with it. So anyone with questions about smart wallets, please unmute yourself.
Okay, you're so good at explanation, and we understand everything, George.
Okay, thank you. Maybe in this case, it's I think it's good to give the floor to James, for James to show the playground. Silva, can you just make James as host so he can share his screen?
All right, I think I am the host now.
Yeah, you can take over the screen sharing now.
Great. All right. Well, it says, okay, great. All right, so if you can see my screen, as George had put in the slide, we're on this website, preview.abridged.io. And this web page actually has an instance of our SDK installed in it. And this is a playground. So if you're a developer, what you can do is you can immediately click around and you can play around with our SDK and see the functionality. And this is a smart contract based wallet. And you will be able to, let me see. Okay, if there's a question, please feel free and put it in the chat. Or unmute yourself and ask. So feel free to interrupt at any time. What happens here is we have the SDK installed on the web, so you don't need to, clone a repo or get your environment set up. You can just go to preview.abridged.io and you can start clicking around. On the left side, you'll see all of the method calls that we support in our SDK. We will talk about the account and what account is, batching transactions, and maybe for a next webinar, we can talk about layer 2 solutions. So in our SDK, we also support peer-to-peer payments. And this is our layer 2 solution, which is outside of the scope of this webinar. We can have another webinar, or feel free to chat with me directly, and we'll give information on the communication channels. More than happy to give a demo of our layer 2 solution. And then we have these utilities at the bottom that are just convenient functions for the SDK. And so if I click around here, you'll notice that this middle part actually gets updated. And the subheadings here are the actual method names in the SDK. The part in the middle is actual code that you would write as a developer to integrate the SDK, and then submit. Depending on the method call, some of them will have parameter inputs. You can put in the parameters and submit, and it actually will run the method calls. All right, so let's start here. So what I'll do here now, let me refresh and reload the page. When I reload the page, what happens is I will automatically get this auth key. So there is a public and private key that gets stored in the browser cache. So if I go here to applications and I go to local storage, I can clear my local storage here. And then if I refresh, I should get a separate, a new auth key. And when I go to create account, I'm going to leave the address blank. I can hit submit, and what I'll see is I'll have now an account address, and this is the smart contract address that will hold the funds. And I have now more information with regards to my account. So I have my initial key that is used to sign messages so that I can move funds from my account to somewhere else. So that's step one. And so now I've created an account. I could also reset my account. I'm looking through messages. Sorry, I'm not being diligent about chat. Okay, so does it, okay. I can reset my account, and that will disconnect it. It will disconnect my key from my account. So let me create account again. And what happens is for every key that I use, I will get the same account address. So they're mapped. And to show this kind of initial functionality, what I'll do is I'm going to transfer funds from my MetaMask account to my account address. So I can just click on the account. It actually will copy it. I go to MetaMask. I'm on Kovan, and you can see at the bottom here in my network, I'm also on Kovan. I can see what the current kind of gas price is set to. And so what I can do is I can say, okay, I want to send to this account address. This account address is not yet deployed. So the contract is not yet deployed. And I want to send it, let's say 0.2 ETH. I'm going to set the price pretty high so that I can actually get this transaction confirmed pretty quick. So with that, I use MetaMask. I now have 0.2 in my account balance. So my contract is not yet deployed. So you can see not yet deployed. I have 0.2 balance in my account. And effectively, what I can do now is I can execute a transaction. So let me resize my screen here. All right. So what I can do is I'm just going to set a random recipient. So, and I'm going to send that random recipient 0.001 ETH. If I wanted to make a contract call, I would put the ABI encoded data in this options.data field. And this is how, from a contract, smart contract address, I could call other smart contracts. So now I want to execute this transaction in a batch. So I do that, and what happens is that has been logged in the batch. So I'm only going to put one transaction in this batch, but I can put up to 5 transactions in a batch before I can submit it. So the second step is I'm going to estimate the batch. And what this does is it allows the relayer that George was talking about in the meta transactions to be able to get a refund. So I just signed this message. So that's the second step. And then this third step is to actually submit this batch. So now I'm going to give a high gas price and I'm going to submit the batch. And when I submit the batch, let me see if I can rearrange my windows here a little bit. You should be able to see down below here, in the logs, when I submit my batch, since I'm giving it a gas price of 30 GWay, it should execute pretty quickly. Let's see on my windows. One sec. Oh, batch is empty. Sorry. Maybe I didn't do this correct. So random 0. Do that. Do the estimate batch. You see that in the logs, the logs are giving me outputs on the batch, and then I can submit batch. I'm going to submit. And so, sorry, let's see what's going on. Not yet deployed, apologies. Getting some random error. I'm not sure what's going on here. 0.2, I submit. So the batch is submitted, I estimate. It's there, and I submit. And so now, once I submit my batch and it's been processed, I can actually see that my total has now decreased, and then my account has been deployed. So what's happened here is I sent a batch, I estimated it so that the relayer can get refunded, and then I submitted my batch. And when I submitted my batch, that 0.001 amount of ETH was sent, and underneath the covers, what had also happened was my account was deployed. And so in order to send funds out of my account address to another random address, I needed to have the account deployed. So the SDK takes care of the batch transactions and managing the state so that the contract deployment state is automatically taken care for you. And I apologize, that demo wasn't as smooth as I would have liked it to be. I don't know what that error was. I think I was just a little nervous and didn't push the right buttons in the right order. But is there any questions with regards to what I've just done? And feel free to also go to Abridged, preview.abridged.io, and be able, you can play around with this yourself and do the exact same things that I've done. And again, you know, one part of this that we're focused on is the smart contracts and the importance of meta transactions with smart contracts, but also as you developers are building out your apps and you get some scale, what we could also have maybe as another webinar is the power of payments and how we could actually do off-chain payments to do aggregated settlement. But that can maybe be an intermediate or advanced webinar for next time.
Yeah, I can break the ice with several questions to you. Can you talk a little bit about guardians? So how can one set guardians with what you with the SDK that's here? How is this even possible with the SDK, and how is done?
Right, that's a great question. So when I started this, let me go back and let me reset my account. So when you load the SDK, you can actually just reset your account and you load the SDK and you initialize it, you automatically will get a key. And essentially what happens with smart contract wallets is you define keys that have access to your account. So it's more like a bank account, if you want to think about it that way. And these auth keys are just credit cards. So with a bank, if you lose your credit card, you can always get a new one and you're generated a new number. And this is what these auth keys are. So a guardian is just another credit card that has access to your account. And this auth key from the guardian not only can have access to your account, but it could actually have privileges, let's say, to add another credit card number, for example. So what you would do is, let's say, when I hit create account, since I've deployed, it remembers that state. So I can go here and create a new account auth key. If I wanted to say, okay, this is my guardian key, I can actually choose the type. And so the type of owner means that it has full access. Restriction means that it has restricted access just to sign messages. And removed means I want to remove that auth key. So I'll say that it's an owner. And when I hit submit, and then I do estimate batch, and then I hit submit batch, what will happen is I will have that random second account now will have ownership of this account as well. And this is how you generate a guardian, so that if I were to lose my auth key, what I could do is ask the guardian who has a second auth key to input or to be able to add a third auth key, which is my new auth key that I generate client side. And this is how you add a guardian, and this is how the guardian recovery works.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Does anyone else have a question?
I think I have one, or this is probably something that I want to be sure that I have understood right. So in the create transaction function, there's an address that is passed as an argument. So actually, this is the address that you want to be your authentication key, right?
So you're talking about the batch set account auth key method?
No, in the beginning, when only in the create account function. Yeah. So here, this address is the address that you want to be your authentication key for your smart contracts, right?
Well, actually, so this address here that you put in, which is in the code here, you can actually put it in as a parameter, will allow you to load up an account. So the account is a smart contract address. Your auth key is your public key that will have access to your account. So if you know the account address that you want to initialize, you can put it in this address field. And if the auth key has access to that account, then this auth key can sign messages on behalf of that account. So I can go here, and when I click on the account, it copies it to my clipboard. And so I can go create account, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paste this address here, and I'll submit. And it's effectively the same thing as, let me reset again, as just hitting create account and hitting submit without the address, because our SDK will keep a mapping of which auth keys are belonging to which accounts. But if you wanted to, you could actually try to connect to any arbitrary contract. You won't have, if you just try to connect to any arbitrary contract that the auth key doesn't have access to, all the methods would fail. But there's an option to do that here if you wanted to. And that's what this address parameter is. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, so actually, this address is the smart wallet contract address.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for your answer.
James, we have two more questions. One is from Nick, who has raised his hand. So Nick.
Oh, great.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes. Hey, Nick.
Yeah, thank you for presentation, George and James. I would like to go a step backward in just step out a bit from the technical aspect of what we do. I have two more generic questions that are kind of in broader space. One is, what do you think is needed for more people to start using decentralized technologies and blockchain? And by more people, I'm talking about people that are not part of this world. That's one. And the second question is, what do you think are the unique opportunities we face right now because of the current situation and the current world? How things are rolling up currently.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I can try to answer both of those questions kind of at the same time. I think that with the current situation that's happening, so first off, the context is the world has been working and moving along, right, previous to this current pandemic situation. And it was good enough. And because it was good enough and it worked, there was a lot of friction for the average user to then try a new system out. And I think that, in my opinion, is why crypto in general has been this niche technology used by the most curious people. And it was the curiosity, at least for me, and the interest in crypto that allowed me to take that step. But most people are busy. They are maybe not as curious in terms of new technology, and things work at least good enough, right? So there's a lot of momentum built up in the way people do things and how they're doing them normally. So there's a lot of friction to change user behavior, and that's one of the things. Even if people understand that something is better and more useful, the friction still exists to learn a new system. It could be scary. They don't have time. And so what we see now here, the world has changed. So I think that in 2020, for my children, they will have little memory of the BC days, the before Corona days. And the world is going to be fundamentally shifted. And with that, because the whole world has kind of taken this right turn, coordinated globally, people have this now opportunity to say, wait a second, I need to do things a little bit differently. So they're forced to change their behavior because of external circumstances. And this is the opportunity, and this is what I'm seeing when people are trying to, help others in need and pull capital resources together. And maybe we can have another seminar or another webinar about DAOs specifically. A DAO is basically a way for people to pool together their funds and distribute those funds to those that are in need. We see that there's this shift where people have to do things differently now, and they're kind of they're removed from their normal day-to-day patterns, so that they have this moment to say, okay, now I'm working from home and I have a little bit more time on my hands. Maybe now I have this opportunity to think about or see other systems. And then two, you can't move money and give it as quickly as you can using the traditional banking system as you do with crypto through DAOs, in a way that is fair, that everyone can vote and have their say. So there's this opportunity now because of this shift in the world and a need that arises from that shift to help pay for testing, help pay for masks, and things like that. So I think the use case is there now, and the situation that gets people out of their comfort zone of how they're doing things before. And I think that now, potentially, when this pandemic is over, and it will be over someday, will the world go back to how things were before, or try to go back, or will people think, wait a second, let's see now where we're at, what things worked, what didn't, and like kind of reevaluate. I saw this happening a couple of times before. So there have been different kind of pivotal events in history that kind of shifted how the broad public has changed. So the dot-com crash was one, which gave rise to social networking. There was, and here in the United States, there was 9/11, and then in 2008, there was a mortgage crisis. And with all of these different events, there was this fundamental shift in society. This last one in 2008, that was the catalyst that actually caused Bitcoin to become into existence. And it wasn't just that, the last mortgage crisis, the financial crisis, it not only was the impetus for Bitcoin to the author or authors of Bitcoin to then say, okay, we should put this out there. It was enough people saw what was happening externally because of that crisis, which created this shelling point, which created this focal point for people to then say, okay, let's take this technology seriously. And I think there's an opportunity now, it seems like every 10, 12 years now, there is this kind of like shifting within a global context of society. So, 2008, now 12 years later in 2020, I think we'll see another shift. And this is actually the window or the time, to really be looking for what those opportunities are, because people, I think now are, more keen to try new and different things. So it's my belief, as we talk to these developers that are here, in this next 12 to 18 months, you'll see the next great crypto company arise. Just like, in the whole dot-com crash is when Google rose up. And it was during the, kind of shift from Web 1.0 to 2.0 that you saw, first it was Friendster, then MySpace, and now obviously Facebook. So we're going to see this shift here now, I think. And I think that the opportunity is ripe. And for everyone that's on this call now, an opportunity to actually make apps that have great user experience that can now start to have traction. And so I think you'll see a shift in crypto. I think as an insider or someone that's been doing this for 4+ years, it's hard for me to kind of get the accurate pulse of what's going on in mainstream. But I do feel like there's a shift in opportunity here, and people taking whether it's smart contract wallets or DAOs, seriously. We're seeing this in growth in different Telegram groups that are trying to pull funds together to help in this the pandemic.
Yeah. It's DAOs are going to become more and more important in the future. I was another question of mine, and then we have one more from Raul. Was in terms of DAOs, do you see any problems in terms of interactions through the smart wallets with DAOs, or do you think that these just complement each other?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think there's a lot of crossover with smart wallets and DAOs, actually, because when you think about it, a DAO is just a smart wallet with voting features.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there's a lot of crossover. I think that there are 3 major DAO frameworks that exist now. There's the Moloch DAO, there is Aragon, and there is DAO Stack. there's a fourth framework, Colony, that is also available actually. And with these different four frameworks, I think that these are great frameworks to start off with. Just like in the developer community, in the JavaScript community, you have different frameworks like Express or Happy, or different ways of like organizing your code. Here, I think you'll see we're just scratching the surface, and this is just the beginning. You'll see a bunch of different DAO frameworks that will rise up, because these DAO frameworks are not only ways to think about how to organize code, but how people can organize themselves. And there'll be different assumptions based off of what the group or the collective wants to really get done. So, for example, you have right now with COVID, you have people wanting to just pull resources together and then give money out collectively via voting to different people that are in need. But you can also see it as a way for, let's say, if I'm an influencer on some network, for example, when I post a video or do whatever on a platform as that influencer, I get and can generate some revenue, but it's the platform that really gets the bulk of that revenue through advertising or whatever the business model is. With a DAO, I can imagine in the future an influencer launching their own DAO, and the people that are in the DAO are their fans. And what can be interesting is that the people that are part of the DAO and the influencer that's leading that DAO, the value stays within that network. And there isn't a third-party platform. And in that way, it's much more capital efficient. So I think we've just scratched the surface of DAOs, and this influencer example is just one example that we'll begin to see. And you're seeing that with this whole movement, which I think is called social tokens, that there are apps like Peepo and Roll that are really moving that forward. And you'll see that. And you see that right now mirrored in different networks that are not in crypto. So on TikTok, for example, they have this notion of collab houses where influencers on TikTok will rent a house and they'll create videos and they'll help each other. So I think it's those type of groups that are primed also, once they have an easy to use experience, just as easy to use as TikTok, that will they'll be able to understand, wow, with crypto, I don't have to have an intermediary. I can share revenue. I can do these things with my fans, and the DAO framework is a way that they can do that.
Yeah. I love the talk about DAOs. However, we just have 1 more minute, and there is one more pending question from Raul that I just I want to be answered. So he asks us whether we can go over the flow of guardians of gain. So maybe I'll just briefly go over the theory. So Raul, the idea there is that you have a smart wallet that has an attached alt key or authentication wallet, and this authentication wallet can only be the one that signs messages, and then these messages are read by the smart wallet and further commands are executed. But what happens if you lose your smart wallet? Well, then we are introducing another administrative almost like figure that we call guardian. And this guardian actually has one privilege, and this privilege is actually to change what is your authorization wallet. And this can be currently done with the auth keys of Abridged. So James, maybe you can show this.
So here I'm just hitting the random button, and it's just creating a random address. I can submit that. And so what I've done is I've submitted to the batch this key to have authorization to this account. And then I can do an estimate, batch, and then I submit batch. And then when that transaction goes through, now we'll have another key. That random key now has authorization to the account. And you can see that here all in the logs.
Wonderful. Okay, so I would just close it with some closing remarks. Any more questions from anyone here? I guess not. So James, can you make me a host?
Oh, yeah. Let me stop the share, and then. So, I'm trying to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, just click right click on LimeChain, and then you can make host. Yes, I'm
Okay.
host now. Okay, so last but not least, let's just recap what we just learned over here and what James showed here. So what James showed us is how we can create a smart wallet. Under the hood, we were communicating with this smart wallet via Relayer and via our client-side application, which was exactly the playground. And we had the Guardian that we just said that in the future we can use for changing what our out key or our authorization wallet is in order to interact with the intended smart contracts. So one last recap of everything that we spoke about here today. So what we did actually achieve by implementing these two concepts? Well, we actually have users that can register with their regular means, email and password. And they have an authorization wallet that is generated and saved, but all of this is happening under the hood. And they're pretty much not even being bothered about it. And Smart Wallet is deployed on demand when they perform their first operation. And they can actually pay in any token that you're willing to accept as a relayer. I think that maybe if somebody wants to see this, you can check this in the playground in the preview.abridged.io. When there is a submit batch, you can actually go ahead and choose a token that you can pay with. And then interactions happen without any interruptions. As you saw, James was submitting transactions to the blockchain network without any interruptions of plugins, and information was just received when everything was happening. And multiple transactions can be batched together, something else that we saw in the preview, and you can actually utilize in your applications. And you can actually go through your regular forgotten password flow just by having the Guardian. And the Guardian is going to reset your wallet and set your new wallet, your new auth key that is going to be using and going to be governing your smart wallet. So pretty much this is everything that we achieved. This is currently what I and many others consider state-of-the-art user experience for the blockchain systems. And we hope that we are going to see some, or hopefully most of you, use something similar in your projects. Any more questions from anyone that has not felt comfortable sharing their questions up until this point? Let me see whether there is any show of hands. I guess not. Okay, so in this case, I think it's a good time for us to close it. This is where you can find us. So on the left are the websites of LimeChain and Abridged, and on the right there is the LimeChain Twitter handle and the Abridged Twitter handle, where we mostly tweet a lot about our work, where you can learn a lot about what we do, and novel new concepts can be seen there. So yeah, pretty much this is all that we had to share with you today, guys. Thank you for your time. I think we are on time, and we hope to see you soon on the next webinar.
Can I add one last thing? If
absolutely.
People also, real quick, I'll put this into the chat, in the Zoom group chat. If you click on that link and you have Telegram, let me see to everyone. I will send this. You can actually click on that link. If you have Telegram, you can join our group channel if you have any questions with regard to what I demonstrated today. And would love to get feedback. And thank you, George, for hosting this. This is awesome. I think, you know, if there's interest, more than happy to do a second or third webinar with our layer 2 solution, and also a third webinar to, if needed, can talk about DAOs as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much, all. Thank you for your time, and we'll follow up with some info and with the recording. Thank you, and bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, guys.